Hopefully, I get my words straight. Speaking of getting words straight, um, um, my words have been really weird lately. And anyway, and I don't even have anything to attribute it to. There's nothing I can blame on except for my brain at the moment. And this is actually kind of the point of today's episode, anyways. Is just a lot of my brain's working a lot, and that's just a matter of fact. And that's what today's episode's about. I mean, it's not about that, but I guess certain things that I'd like to talk about for today. And that's what kind of got me going, because I was like, man, this episode was another episode where I was trying to think about content, but then also, like, along with thinking about the content itself, seeing where I'm going with just everything. And it's funny because that's all that ties into, I get in my own way. And I've known that. I don't know if I've ever talked about it. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. I probably have in person, in conversations in person. But because of that, then all these things start just like piling up. Like, well, what about this? Well, what if this happens? Then what? And if this other thing happens, then what about X, Y, and Z? And then what about A, B, C, and D, and E? And what about And the way I sound is funny. The way I sound is like that's how it feels sometimes, and it's like, trying to process through my thoughts, and then take out, or really, I guess now that I'm talking out loud and trying to put this, into play, it's almost like that it would be a prioritize and execute situation, because it's like, okay, what's most important right now that either I want to get accomplished or needs to get done, whether it's like a personal commitment that I have, or the podcast, or something work related. It's interesting because it's kind of built up even in going through as we go through today's episode, because I'm thinking about, okay, like, I'm thinking about the merch, and then I'm thinking about, what if I do this with the pod? What if I do, because I've mentioned this where I'm trying to be well rounded as far as podcast content, because the thing is, like, for me in my weekly life, it's not only about like leadership and business. I've gravitated to that, so a lot of it is that. I talked about the talent. I've talked the Talent War, the last book I read. Right now I'm staying with my boys. It's a story about John Basilone, which I can go into it. Well, I'll probably go into it later. I've already bookmarked a couple of things. I just started, so I haven't read as much as I had been these last few days. So because again, my mind's kind of going, and I'm thinking about the future, but then I'm also trying to enjoy the present. Really, that's what it comes down to. Is like trying to enjoy the present, thinking about the future, but then once I get tied into the future, then I lose. I get thrown off balance. It's not that I lose balance, but I get thrown off balance because then I get ahead of myself, and then I get in my own way, and I'm actually not accomplishing anything. And there's no moves being made. There's no, let's say, new merch to come out. There's no new content to be posting. As far as building, moving with life, and the cool thing is to reel back is that the cool thing is like that's what this is about, anyways. Because maybe you feel like that too. Sometimes we think too much about the future and not enjoy the present, or vice versa. Then we're living in the moment is good, and I 100% support that, because I try to do it as much, especially when I'm at work, or if I'm interacting, if I'm having a conversation, if I met somebody new, and we're just talking, kind of getting to know each other. There's different situations that come up, and Um, and it's like, okay, that living in the moment is it's 100% necessary, because if you don't, then by the time you know it, you are 20 years down the road, and you're like, where did this time go? Where did February? I mean, I forgot today was March 1st. I was like, oh, I gotta pay rent, which is, it's not a big deal. It's just like, it was just a matter of fact. But it's like, oh, today's March 1st. I had not even, that didn't even come to mind, and I was like, oh, February's over, and you know what, and I can lay out, how February went, and then I got to get back into the podcast, really hone in as far as just posting content that I feel like is necessary, for what Moving with Life is, and then, but now it's over, and now it's on to the next month. Now it's on to a new month, because you don't want to get caught up in that past, because then you lose what will be March, and maybe you know, maybe you don't know. But that's those are the mental and universal. We'll say universal. But I'm meaning games with the universe and time and space. And I could bring up other stuff, because I'm pretty sure I have. But as far as time and space and all this deep thought that I can rabbit hole into, because I think about it sometimes. I think about bigger things, like, and it's interesting because, I mean, if you look at like Elon Musk and like the action he's taking to develop all like these rockets, and then to have I forgot what he called it. He said on Joe Rogan, it's like inner something travel, interplanetary or something travel. I'm not even gonna Google it right now, because I don't want to, because it's gonna send me off another. But the point is, taking that math, and that's what he's done. I mean, Tesla, like, it's cool, like, what he's done, and it's like, man. Anyway, so action versus like just too much thought, and then trying to get things done, but then also like, this is a it's not self-sufficient, but it's a one-man show, and because I want to do this anyways. If that makes sense. I'm trying to make sure my ideas are running even as I talk for today's episode. One guy I want to talk about today for sure, and I wrote the majority of my notes based on like the podcast that I heard from him. But Naval Ravikant, I don't think I talked about him last time, because I talked about the Moving with Life, the Talent War, and Chapter 7. So Naval Ravikant, I first heard about him on. No, I had to have talked about him, because I first heard about him on Instagram. I saw this video, and I was like, oh, yes, I did, because I posted the video along with the show notes. But so anyway, so I've been going down this Naval Ravikant rabbit hole as far as content, because he's been on Tim Ferriss multiple times. The first time I heard him talk was actually on Joe Rogan. I listened to the full podcast, and I think because of Tim Ferriss, though, I had originally tuned into his podcast, but it wasn't for me then. And this was even in because he started in 2019, and I remember listening to it, and I heard it, but that's all I was doing. Like I wasn't able to comprehend what exactly was going on, and lately, as of late, I have been like, oh yeah, I get this better now. I understand this better now, and so I've been listening, and on episodes. So the cool thing about his episodes, especially if you're like that dopamine rush, and I'm the same way, but if you're that type of person that likes short clips and bits and little gold nuggets, the majority of his episodes so far, especially for sure the ones that were done in 2019, they're all like 6 minutes and under, and for podcasts, especially informational podcasts like that that are dense with information, I listen to at 1.5 speed, and what that allows me to do is listen to the episode multiple times very, very quickly. And by now I've actually adjusted to listening to 1.5 speed, so I'm pretty used to it now. And it varies, like depending on who's talking, who's conversing. I'll listen to it at 1.5 speed, or if it's a conversation like Theo Vaughn had Brian Callen on recently, and that one I like enjoying that conversation. And I actually, one of my buddies, he's like, bro, like how can you listen to it so slow? Because he listens to everything. Even if he can get movies sped up, he'll listen to movies sped up. And I'm like, well, I just want to enjoy the conversation. Like right now, I'm on let's just say I'm washing dishes and cooking dinner or something, or cooking dinner and then washing dishes, something to that effect. And I just have instead of sometimes I have music, but sometimes it's me wanting to just listen to. I like listening to people's conversations. It's in because it's to me I'll associate it as the same thing as like people watching Twitch and these gamers do these things, and if you're on TikTok, swiping up and down for 5 hours or 3 hours, 3 to 5 hours, whatever it is. It's kind of the same for me. That's my thing. I these conversations, and then it allows me to expand and think about like, oh yeah, like I wouldn't have thought about that, or like sometimes current events, current news. I don't watch the news. I don't watch TV. I watch a lot of YouTube. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'm sure some of this is reiteration, but it's the point. It's still the point of like Naval and what he's saying as far as taking action, and I'm gonna get further into it, but yeah. So it's like going through that information, because again, I don't listen to news. Like, okay, cool, and sometimes I just want to listen to a conversation, and I do, and then 2 hours later, here we are, and then I go on about my business. But so I listen to Sped Up, and I've listened to episodes 1 through 4. And this is particular one is number 4. I'll see if I can find it some. I don't know if it's on YouTube or not. I can find it, but anyway. So I listened to 2 episodes of him on Tim Ferriss. So his original. I think it was episode 97. Is the first episode on Tim Ferriss that Naval was on, and then the second one was like 100 and something, and so between listening to the first episode on Tim Ferriss, which was an actual like interview style, and then the second one is Tim Ferriss sent him a bunch of questions from listeners and people who had questions in general, and he answered them. It's about an hour long, and that one I've actually I've listened to it twice, and the first time, actually no, both times, because I've listened to it on my way to work, and it's kind of worked out, and so he goes into this depth, and I'll likely bring that episode up particularly because I need to write notes on it. I've been listening to it on my drive, so it's like okay. But anyways, all that got me going back to his podcast and subscribing again to his podcast, because I listened to episode 1. I'm like, oh yeah, like this. I'm not gonna say it makes sense to me now, but I think this is the right time that I can start understanding what he's trying to give us, because frankly, it is like short bits, and they're his thoughts and of what he thinks, or how he thinks things should be, as far as like whether you want to be rich or whether you want to be wealthy. I talked about episode 1, on episode 111, so I definitely have like talked about it. But I've been on the same kick. Here we are. A couple weeks later, and I'm on the Naval rabbit hole, and I'm kind of running with it as long as I can. Very similar to like when I was reading Talent Wars, like I just couldn't put it down. I was just reading. I was going through it, and that's actually the first book I've finished in a minute. I have a collection of books that I have with me, but as I've been cycling through them, I have a separate box of books that I'm done reading for now, because I have other books that yes, maybe I want to reread whatever book I have in there, but I need to continue on for now. Hopefully, my hope is that one day I will circle back to all my earmarks and stuff. And either maybe I won't remember why I earmarked it the first time, but if I read it, I can be like, oh yeah, that's still relevant, or oh yeah, that's an important one. I need to write that down now that I'm going back to it. There's another couple books that I want to reread that I brought back from home, but I feel the urge and the need to read new books. I need to just continue on my path and reading new books. Anyways, getting back to episode 4, one of the things he mentions towards the ladder is if you have a functioning body and a functioning mind, you have the ability to create wealth, your own wealth, and compound that wealth in multiple ways, whether it's selling a product, creating a service for others, design. He talks about coding out, and as much as he talks about coding and like things to like tech nature, it's like, man, that's not me. I could probably learn how to do it, and I learned how to adapt to new software. We had to do that at work. It was a whole like just 180 turn of new software, and you learn how to do it. You learn how it works, and you get your groove, you get your flow state, and then you're good essentially. You know, as long as you have the basics down packed really well. But him saying that, it's like, yeah, because even recently I was talking to another buddy, and we were talking about personal stuff, and then we eventually got into like our businesses. He has a business. This isn't a business for me. This is for me is it's a culture. It's like I said, it's a community. It's a community I'm trying to build, and I'm building it from scratch, which is that's kind of my nature as well. Being organic and bringing just my thoughts. These are my thoughts that I throw in here, and then one day, or as you listen to this, if you want to expand on it, or it helps you strike your own idea to then go do your own business or service. That's what the angle is. That's what I want to do here. It's spreading the word, trying to, and because a lot of times, and I've told this to you, I said this before, but sometimes when I talk about things on here, it's stuff that I need to remind myself as well. Whether it's creating good habits, eating better, going out for a walk. I mean, that's good to just getting out of the sun, getting some natural vitamin D, different things like that, and listening to that episode over and over. I even this morning, I probably listened to it like 4 or 5 times, and 1.5 speed. It's within like what, let's say 8 minutes. I was listening to I listened to at least four times, and it's a short episode. It's only like it's like 4.5 minutes, and when you got to the functioning body, functioning mind, I was like, okay, so that got me to start writing notes for today's episode, and I wanted to get to this point eventually, and one thing that as I was writing is I was like, oh, I'm focusing too much on the money and not enough on the time. And if you listen to episode 4, it'll make plenty of sense. Because he says, he's like, I have so many options that I don't have enough time. I have all these opportunities and ideas that I know I can do and I want to do, but I don't have enough time to do them all. And I was like, man, it sounds great to get to a point where you have so many ideas that you can, or it really, maybe it's ideas that you have confidence to execute, but you don't have enough time to execute them all, let's say in a single day or right now at this moment. So you have to choose which one you want to do first and kind of go down your list. That's what it sounds like. And when it got to that, I was like, oh, and it's funny because it got, one of the first designs that I made was time over money, and I've talked about it. I talk about it, but in these past few days, going back to like me, like I said, I've been going down these rabbit holes in my head, not counting what I've been listening to in podcasts and reading, but just thinking very much about the future. And so that's I'm considering time, but then, it's like, well, but even with thinking about time, the underlying like priority is the money, and it's like, whoa, and this is again, so this is me drawing back. It's like, oh, hey, don't I say time over money? Isn't time more important? So if I take action and do the things that I want to, like, all that else is going to take care of itself, which it is, and that even balances out with my current situation. I work in healthcare, and I'm able to do patient care. So I'm learning a lot, and that's definitely what's driving me to enjoying going. Learning to learn in college, and now applying my learning processes out and trying to then help others. Like, oh yeah, hey, I learned like this. How what's your approach? And and then talking to docs and talking to nurses, like, hey ma'am, hey sir, I noticed this. What does it mean? I don't understand what that means. Or when you're thinking about, when the patient comes in and they're talking about, let's say, flank pain. So you're thinking kidney. So now you go through your checklist of like potential things, and as you start doing, like, let's say, blood work in different labs, you start from the most critical, and you start working your way down to start knocking off these possibilities, and hoping to find the least amount, or the least not the least amount, but the least the least serious, no life threatening situation where it's like, oh hey sir, man, and that goes to the doc still. But my point is, like, just learning and understanding, and so I like doing that. So it's balancing, like, learning and doing that, and that's where my primary income comes from, and then balancing it with this, because doing the podcast and reading and keeping myself accountable, they work hand in hand. It's not one of these. It's together. It's this network of things, and I've always, eventually I will get a whiteboard, and it won't be here and it won't be now, but I do, because a whiteboard will help me explain how I see networks, and it's gonna be probably pretty lengthy. I'm not saying lengthy time wise, but like how I see how things are connected. And because I for whatever reason, when I've been able to find these patterns and how things are connected, it at least makes sense to me. And then it's not about, because it's not also about like getting rid of questions, but if I can find why X is X, then I can just leave it, because it exists, and that's okay. And I found the answer, I found the solution, so now I can move on to something else. G, F, D, whatever other thing I have, and then once I find that, and it's like, okay, this, and then it's like, oh, and then by the time when you're done with this research, you start realizing that G is connected to X, and Y, it's like, oh, because of this, and then you have A over here, and anyway, so going down all these multiple rabbit holes. So in summary, it's getting back to time over money for me, and that's what I'm getting to, is functioning mind. You have a functioning body, then we are able to do, whether it's within our community or us as individuals, because we have big goals. Like, we'll go, and then that's another thing. Is like, go for them. Like, go for your goals and ambitions. And the thing is, because the hard part is, as human beings, we don't like failing. I don't like to fail. It makes me nervous when I might fail. But it's getting over that. It's getting over that hump. It's getting over that fear. And I guess another little tangent that I do want to go down, because I do it a lot, and because it's the closest thing that I can connect to, that's somebody else that I learned it from, or have understood this concept. But so Jocko, I talk about Jocko a lot, and I've done it before, and I've talked about it like this, maybe I haven't. But the reason why, because if it's not seen, if it's not like understood enough, like, he's had a big impact on my life and how I do things and how I think about things and how I connect things. But before I forget that, the reason I'm bringing him up, so he always talked about his guys when they were out in Ramadi in 2006, about being fearless, and he says it's not that they weren't fear, it's not that they didn't have fear, but it's that they were able to get beyond the fear, and it's like, so that's what that means sometimes. Maybe the majority of the time, I don't know, I can't give you that answer, but because you think about fear, if you think about fearless at its base, fearless, you'd not have fear. But the way he tied it in is like, no. It's like, yes, that's some of it maybe, but the other part is like knowing where you're going and going anyways, even though you're going into the danger, you're going into the fight, but you go anyways because you're gonna go with your buddies and you guys are gonna do what you believe to be right and just. And so trying to hone that fear and take action, whatever that may be, to chase your dreams, to get back to this. Now we're going to drive back to the middle of being able to chase your dreams, whatever that may be, and then maybe they change. I don't know if I said it like this, but I mean, at least since I was way younger, like 10 years old, I thought I'd be a musician for all my life, and that it didn't happen that way, and it took me a lot. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of it actually took a lot of conversation and making sure, am I doing the right decision? Am I making the right decision? Am I making the right decision? I don't know. I didn't know then, but I knew something needed to change, and in my hopes, at the benefit of everybody, not just me, because of what I was turning into at that point when I started thinking about that. Deep breath. But yeah, that's a lot of what's been going on, and that's like I said, I had a conversation just yesterday, personal stuff, and I'm not gonna talk about it because it's my stuff, it's family stuff, it's personal stuff, it's stuff that doesn't need to be talked about on here. It needs to be known. Okay, there's this other stuff, but because when I come on here for Moving with Life, that's what it's about too, though, because I know that's what I want for my friends and especially for everybody, but so not especially not the right word, but for these younger generations that are coming up, and then hopefully if I can live even decently, my superiors and my elders and those that I communicate with, whether they're younger or older than me, we can drive in this direction, and that direction is to go and live, whether it's to chase your dreams, to develop whatever it is you want to develop, to make that change that you want to change. I don't talk a lot about politics. I don't talk a lot about other things like in that direction, because it's not for me. So but whatever it may be, whatever that thing is, because at the very least, when I was doing when I was doing music professionally, I was chasing my dream, and nothing had held me back. I was able to do that, and I was able to do it for 6 years, and see people and meet people and go and play these places and create music and create these sounds with this piece of wood. Multiple pieces of wood and some metal and some wires, that I was able to do that. And now I'm doing what I'm doing now, being in the healthcare situation and learning again. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the premise. And I get asked all the time, oh, what, I actually talked about this yesterday. I had a dog. Hey, what are you gonna do when you grow up? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm here and I'm learning. So I'm gonna run with this, and I'm gonna take it and run with it, because that's just where I'm at right now. And hopefully, as I continue trying to bring this content and keep listening to other people's ideas and thoughts, and I remember thinking about that too. It's interesting that this person thought about it, in this way. Then we continue. We continue building, and see where we go from there. I need to figure out what I'm gonna, because figure out what I'm gonna do for March is not the best answer. It's not exactly the right answer either. But like I said, I literally forgot today was March 1st. It's not that I didn't know that February was a short month or that it was ending on the 28th, but it wasn't my first thought this morning was like, oh, it's March 1st. Like, no, I get up and I kind of get my life together, and then I started to, especially for right now, because I needed to get my gears running so I can record this episode. That's kind of And it's like, oh yeah, it is March 1st. It's like, dang, it is March 1st. So aside from that, I'm still working on some good habits and some other plans that I have that I'm working on. It's all kind of, making sure I use my time wisely is probably one of the main things. And yeah. So if you have a functioning mind and a functioning body, you can probably get a lot more done. If you have and you can go as far as if you have all your limbs, and even then, if you see the people who don't have their limbs and the great things that they can do, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's climbing a mountain, whether it's being very very successful business person, those exist too. And so that's today's episode. One thing I wanted to show off today. Oh, well, I guess, like I said, the book I'm currently reading, and I'll go into it later, is I'm Staying with My Boys it's a story of Sergeant Basilone. So Jim Prosser, I'm guessing it's Prosser because it's only one S, and Jerry Cutter, basically they accumulated all the stories they could from people that knew him, and they made this story. So I just started it. Sergeant Basilone, he's a Medal of Honor recipient, World War II hero. He was featured on HBO's The Pacific, which it's so good. I've watched it twice. I've watched Band of Brothers, so The Pacific takes care of them like Iwo Jima and anything in the Pacific Theater during World War II is based on, or HBO's The Pacific was based on that, and then Band of Brothers was based on the European theater. Which is Major Dick Winters, and I've talked about him a bunch. The Band of Brothers, is it I think it's first 506, 101st Airborne. So yeah, so you have, or it was technically the second of the 506. The first of the 506 is who Jocko served with when they were, I think Ramadi. I think it was Ramadi. Either way, but yeah, and so that's what I'm reading right now. As far as content I'm going through, so at Naval is his Twitter. The podcast is titled, it's just Naval too. Yeah. So the podcast is also Naval. Let me see. Back. Yep. Naval. Just says Naval, and then, if you scroll, I have it set to where I have like newest to oldest, so I have to go to the very bottom at all the time to start, so I can listen from the beginning. And those are very like I said, I recommend it. You can do what you want with this information, but yeah. I had one of these made. This is a NetGator. It's not cold anymore, but it's obviously you can also use it in the sun and like different things. So it's moving with life, obviously with the the full logo. This is just a prototype. I'm probably gonna move the printing to the top. I just did it like this because of like when I saw it on the computer, I was like, oh, this might make more sense. And then when I got it and I put it on, like, in theory, it still makes sense, but I'm going to move it up to the top. So I'm going to get that done. If you are interested in getting one of these, let me know, because it's not posted. This, like I said, this is just a prototype of what the NetGator would look like, minus where the printing is going to be. But if you were interested, send me an email, hit me up on Instagram. I'm using my Twitter again. It's my personal account. I won't put the @ on here, but I am on Twitter. And if I were to get responses, then I'll post it on as merch. For now, I'm not. It's just gonna be it's just a prototype that I have that I own, and then we'll go from there. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. I really do. It's one thing to talk about appreciation. I'll probably have to go into this another day because I'm already over the time that I want to be for today's episode. But it's one thing to be appreciative and say it, but showing it, I feel like it's more difficult than even we realize it is to show that we're appreciative of our friends and family and listeners. In this case, listening to the podcast, I appreciate it. But yeah, so don't forget, take care of yourself mentally and physically. Take care of each other. Take care of your teams. If you're in charge, if you're in the lead from the front. And let's try to keep that time over money concept alive. With that, I'll see you all very, very soon.